Batu, Barada, Nikto.
You must remember those words.
Gordon's alive!
You know what the Turing test is?
I know Kung Fu.
Dead or alive, you are coming with me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Stories Out of Time and Space. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and as ever, I'm joined by the precognitive Julian Darius. How you doing, Julian? You okay?
I'm doing great, and I'm causing a little ball to roll down with your name on it.
That means something very different elsewhere, I'm sure. Today, we are doing another, this season, sort of Philip K. Dick adaptation. And also, I think to boot, our first Steven Spielberg film as well. So, jump in. We are doing 2002's Minority Report, starring Tom Cruise, Max von Sydow, and Colin Farrell. As I said, directed by Steven Spielberg. This is a film for me that I used to remember coming out. It's one of those films that when I realised this was 2002, I've realised how old I was and how immortal Tom Cruise is, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, I remember this being really good, and I remember this, when this came out, I had this on. I think I still got the DVD I bought from then. So it's a pretty solid Spielberg film. But you know, I'll be interested to see what we think about it as a film that came out in 2002. Do you remember when it came out, Julian? What were your thoughts? Obviously, you know, it being a Dick adaptation and stuff.
I liked it. I will see most Spielberg stuff in theaters, at least before COVID. I think Spielberg doesn't get enough credit. I think that certainly in my circles, he's kind of looked down upon. He's sort of known as the artistic director for the middle class. You know, he's not the real artsy guy. And you know, there are elements about that are fair, but also he is an amazing filmmaker, and I have been so moved by his work. And I think, having just watched recently some documentary about him, it brought back so much emotion from his work and how well shot it all is. So I saw this in theaters, and I didn't expect a whole lot. I sort of had seen the trailers and yeah, Cruise does look kind of immortal. I think Cruise is... I've liked him in some stuff and not liked him in others. I think that he, in the original Philip K. Dick story, the protagonist, typical of a Dick story, is sort of overweight and middle-aged and, you know, typical Dick protagonist. And then, you know, it's like we've got Tom Cruise. And I find him a little flat sometimes. So I thought, well, okay, well, they've turned a Dick story into another actioner. And I was surprised by how much I liked it. And then it sort of became a pop culture reference for precognition.
Yeah, I say I was similar when this came out. I remember being sort of, good Spielberg. You know, I remember sort of. I agree. I think Spielberg is a master director. Yeah, you know, one of the things I think that Spielberg is good at is every film that he comes to, for the most part, and I think there are a couple of outliers, but every film he comes to with a sort of an authenticity as to what that film is. You know, like if he's coming at an action adventure film, he's coming to do a good action adventure film. If he's coming to do a war film, he's coming to do a good war film. You know, he knows what the bubble of that film is, and he'll try and keep it within that bubble and you know, keep it as real to that as possible. I think that's why I think he's very adaptable and he's very good at that. And it shows in this. Like this is, like you said, this is a sci-fi actioner, and it sort of it feels like a Spielberg film. You know, and that's not no bad thing. That's what I'm saying. It feels in a good way. And Cruise is great. I think, you know, like you say, he is that sort of quintessential action hero. You know, he's not deep. He's not particularly he's not bringing a whole lot of depth to the character. It's one thing I will get into in this film is like, at no point nothing in this film is ever subtext. It all becomes text pretty quick. In my notes, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting point that they've sort of alluded to. And then the next scene, someone will literally spell it out and you go, right, they thought that too. Okay, well.
Right, yes. But, I mean, that fits Cruise, right? I mean, Cruise is perfect for that kind of film.
Exactly, yeah. And it's almost like one of the things I appreciate for this film is some people will say that it's dumbing down. It's dumbing down. You go, yeah, but that's no bad thing because you are still introducing concepts of sort of and ideas in a way that someone that probably doesn't take on sci-fi concepts or these ideas of time and cognition and all this other stuff every day, and you want to feed them like things about paradoxes and about and they actually address the sort of at some points about the ethics of precognition, justice, and all this other stuff. So they feed at you, but it's not a bad thing because it's a bit like saying, like, yeah, here's a beautiful meal, try some. It's available for you to eat. So I enjoyed it. I think it's got flaws, but I think it was actually really good fun.
No, I agree, and I think that I am bothered by the sort of Cruise effect, though. I am bothered by how direct it is. I think. I don't think that's a flaw. I don't think that it's really dumbed down. The thing that bothers me is I think it is overly long. Mm-hmm. We were just talking about how neither one of us remembered it was 2.5 hours. I mean, I was like, this is a Marvel movie before the fact. But I am always sort of bothered in this movie about how Cruise is like able to evade detection. Mm-hmm. And it's all done well, but it's sort of like, oh yeah, nobody is smart except for these guys. And that's a thing that Cruise movies where it's like, I'm the ultimate spy in Mission Impossible. It's like, no, I don't really buy that with you. You're smart enough, but yeah, you're not a ninja and, you're not a super spy. So, I mean, there is a little kind of like, I think that stuff works with Total Recall. I mean, I think that has that whole subtext that makes it work. And it's also goofy. But I can't point to any scene here that I think is wrong because of that. I don't feel thrust out of the movie. I feel like, yep, that was well done. It's just not, I don't know. It doesn't take it to a 10 for me, Yeah,
I mean, one of the things that I have with this film is that sort of with the concepts and the way it all rolls out, like I constantly feel like I don't want to say there's a better film in there, but like you say, it's again one of those that you think if you'd actually taken maybe one more pass at the script, and tightened it up a little bit in some places, like this film would literally jump up to that next level. Because it is, there's some bits that are just a bit too silly. That but also
like the main conspiracy plot.
Yeah. It's so sort of just sort of, if everything has to be right in order for it to work. And I hate when that sort of all those coincidences have to sort of line up for it all to work. Because you're a bit like, well, so you're saying that he relied everything, like, everything on this one thing. That I'm pretty sure there was another way around this,
Right.
There's got to have been another way around this. I mean, yeah, but this film does raise good points. Actually, one of the things that I thought was really interesting actually is the opening scene of this film, especially in this day and age. So the pure concept is they have actually in the first. I'm going to bring up 2 points actually in the first bit. So basically, you have a pool with these 3 precogs in. They are sort of 3 individuals that have the ability to see into the future, and the one thing they're able to determine with a fair level of accuracy, or 100% accuracy, they say, is murders. So they can tell you when a murder is going to happen. And you either get a wooden ball, or you get what they call a red ball. And a red ball is it's going to happen any minute because it's a crime of passion. And in doing this, his precognition has brought down the crime level and sort of stuff. But this one morning, some guy's about to find out that his wife is having an affair, and he's about to go off on one and stab them both with scissors and whatever. So they get this red ball. And then so you see some of the ideas are good. And again, it's one of these sort of like good idea, bad idea. But they have this idea that when this red ball is done, they have the sort of like the file. They're able to see what the precogs can see. And there's a level of detection. But to keep it transparent and to keep them honest, they have two witnesses from different areas of justice. I think there's like a judge and a barrister or whatever. And I thought, again, that's quite a clever idea. They've actually thought about how this system would work. And then it ends up with it. They find the guy, but what do? They send in basically some militarized unit to smash someone's house to bits to find someone who is about to kill his wife. And all I could think about with this is, I'm sure there's some de-escalation techniques that could have brought this to a very reasonable close.
Well, when you think about it, precognition should be the least dramatic sort of cop movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, we know you're about to commit a crime. Sorry, bucko, you're under arrest. What? I haven't even thought of that yet. Or I've got the gun in my pocket, but I mean, I'm not prepared in any way. Yet they make that opener sort of an action set piece. And I think it's a smart opener. I think it's ambitious the way it sort of starts with those visions and you know, you're sort of like, okay, what is it that I'm seeing? And it's smart, it's traditional to kind of start with that action opener and the status quo before you demolish it, which happens very quickly. But yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I did think sort of as they're standing outside the houses and, you know, Tom Cruise is like, you know, it's those moments where you know that the writer and the director were trying to think of a way to make this more dramatic. Yeah. Where Tom Cruise is just standing outside saying, you know, like, go through that footage. Tell me, you know, what the door looked like. Did he shut the door? No, the door's open. Well, that's how he knows where to charge. It's the sort of like raising of Cleopatra's needle, you know, in Cleopatra. That doesn't mean to be a 20-minute scene cut back and forth that feels really dramatic.
Well, the thing is, it serves two purposes. Like you say, it shows the capability of your protagonist, and it shows that there is the ability to have a ticking clock in this. They can give you a time, and they can give you a sort of like some details of the murder, so it sort of sets up the plot for the main story. But again, it just felt so like literal overkill, because what they've seen that all this guy is. And the things they see in the murder, he's a dumpy middle-aged man about to kill his wife with a pair of scissors. They send in a team of 8 people, including 4 of them that come through a skylight on ropes with guns. And all I'm thinking is like, one cop could have done this. Tom Cruise on his own should have been, or two, him and a partner should have been. And then that partner being the blonde guy who is also Damien Dark in the Arrow movies, or the Arrow series. That should have been it. Like, bring it down. Like, there's too much going on in this opener. Like that feels a bit too Spielberg. It's a bit big. But I was like, wow. I wonder how many people get injured. In fact, there's a great moment. I'm sorry, I'll let you talk about it. There's a great moment when they come through the ceiling and they sort of all pounce on the guy with the pair of scissors, like 12 people on a pair of scissors. And they've come through the glass, and the wife's like, the lover steps on broken glass, and you can see him go, ooh, ah. And I'm like, yeah, he's probably like cut his feet. He's got all kinds of stuff. He's got tetanus. Like, you know, is it worth it? You could have come through the door. Like, it just feels so, in this day and age, watching it now in hindsight, I'm a bit like, feels a bit silly, you know, trying to justify your budget, are you?
Yeah, well, the thing you have to understand is that we're Americans and we are very violent as a people. Yeah. We like to swat flies with bazookas. No, I mean, that's a very good point about that sort of overkill. And you think that because he's sort of this is a crime of passion. So presumably seeing an officer would probably snap him out of it. He's not going to stab his wife in front of an officer. That's not this guy. That ought to be enough. Yet you sort of see Cruise rushing in, and then the camera's kind of tight on the potential killer, with the scissors, and then Cruise kind of like reaches into the frame and grabs him. Cruise came in the room, right? If the camera hadn't been so tight, you would have thought this isn't nearly so dramatic. And I didn't pick up on that until you were just talking about it. What I did pick up on was the skylight thing. And it's after Cruise has got it that, it's like, cue the SWAT team falling through the skylight. We're here. We're ready to go. Like, why did you even send these guys with the skylight? I didn't understand that.
Well, one of the things that happens in the film, which I find is again, quite funny. And this is an interesting thing. It sort of should have happened the other way around. There's a scene later on when Cruise is on the run and he's being chased down by a bunch of federal agents, and one of those agents drops their gun. And it looks like a shotgun. It looks like a shown-off shotgun. It's got, lighting. But what you find is he spins it round, and it sort of like is like an energy weapon. It sort of fires off a pulse of sort of like energy. So it doesn't hurt them. It just pushes them away and, through a bunch of barrels, which is quite a cool idea. I like that. But surely, they have this weapon, which is like a subduing weapon, yeah? Which great, non-lethal, right? Which I'm thinking is a good idea. Yet they make a big point of him holstering his gun at the start of the film, and I'm again like, surely he should have one of those because no one's actually committed a crime yet when you turn up. So surely your non-lethal force should be your directive for this precognitive crime avoidance. Yeah,
that's a good point, and it makes for a good special effect. But before we get into too many details, I want to say that I think it's interesting what I remember from this movie and what I don't. I don't remember any of the conspiracy stuff.
Yeah.
I remember him running away. I remember, sort of the cars and the car chase scene. I don't remember any of these other characters. I remember the precogs in that look. I remember the balls with people's names on them. I remember, I remember that sort of stuff. I remember those visuals. Also him using the sort of heads-up display, which has caught on, right? I mean, that might be the most influential thing about it. But really, the whole way that they have structured this precog technology, pre-crime, is absolutely ludicrous. Yeah. It's just masked within Spielberg wonder. So, you sort of go with it because Spielberg's very good at he knows what to pull in on and give you that close shot so you don't realize there was 30 feet from the door and Tom Cruise grabbing this guy in which something should have happened. But I remember all of that stuff. I think this movie has had a very lasting and surprising legacy. Even that it just seemed like, an actioner at the time. But then there's all the stuff that I don't remember. And I think that kind of fades out over time. That isn't ultimately all that important.
No, I'd agree with that. And again, you say about the legacy of this film, and I think, there are certain things in this film that, and it's usually either something sort of a special effect or, as you said, the sort of the using the fingers on some sort of screen. I mean, I think without this film, you wouldn't have Tony Stark doing it in 3D later in sort of, Iron Man and those films. Ironically, Tom Cruise was considered for Iron Man at one point. But yeah, I agree with even like the transparency, those things of having like the perspex things that pass information from one thing to that turned up in plenty of films later on and stuff. It's quite cool. It's a good aesthetic. It looks pretty cool because it's not something we've got yet. It still looks like a good technology. And I do like some of the sort of and there's the little spider things they've got and all these other things. There's some. Again, as you said, that's the master that Spielberg is. Like they're the cool things that you go, yeah, they look really cool. The moment of him underwater, and the spiders looking for him, and all, they're the things I remember, as you say. Unfortunately, when you look at it and you try and watch it and go, how does the story actually stack up? I was a bit like, I'm not sure it does. There's still things in this film that I'm a bit like, coincidences have to have happened, like, like, for this to have made any sense. And also, we'll get into the conspiracy plot of this in a moment, because I'm not 100% sure why it happens and what the point is. Like, I don't understand the point of it, like what it achieves.
I don't either. But I mean, the whole pre-crime thing is, I mean, first of all, you have to believe in psychic powers, which is done kind of sort of Judge Anderson like. It's kept relatively believable. It's not you're not in the X-Men, but you do have to make this leap of faith, and then you sort of have to believe in this program of altering them and selling your daughter. And ultimately that the government would set up this experimental pre-crime division, which, okay, that I can buy that. That's well enough. But then suppressing the idea that there's a minority report, how have you suppressed that? And they say, like, well, we've done this because the public needs to know that these murders were going to occur with absolute certainty. Right, but they're not.
Yeah.
You're selling them on a technology that literally doesn't work, or at least, it's like this is a test for COVID. Well, it's got a 60% accuracy. You're telling us it's 99.
Yeah.
You might want to investigate that before you have a plan to roll that out nationally.
Well, it's one of those things, and I started watching it this time. When I got to the end, I had some serious questions, because this thing's set up in Washington, D.C. They keep telling you that repeatedly, just to be really sure that it's not national. It's just happening in Washington, D.C. I was like, fine, that's not a problem for me. It's a local. They keep referring to it as the precog experiment, and fine, that's good. This experiment has an awfully big budget because it's a massive building, and I'm not entirely sure what all these people in the building seem to do. Because it just seems to be Tom Cruise, his three mates, Max von Sydow, and like two other people that really seem to matter. But the thing I was quite... They want to go national with this thing. And maybe I missed it, and maybe you can clarify this for me, but you have these three cognitives in this pool. Agatha, Dashiell, and I forget who was called, Arthur, something like that.
The twins.
The twins, and then Agatha, yeah. And so what I was like, okay, that's fine. And as you said, if you can buy into precognitive and psychic abilities, you can buy into that. How is, again, I can't believe the whole country is buying into it. Fine. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is just the way the modern world works now. But more than that, I was thinking, you're basing your entire justice system around something that can last really no longer than 70 years.
Yes.
Because they're all going to die.
Right. And who's going to be doing this in all the other cities?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, who are going to be these?
Yeah. Is it just these three, or are you somehow going to engineer other precogs? At no point did they explain how this thing's destined to work. And that was sort of a bit of a problem for me. I was like, I don't understand how this seems to be set up as this thing. And that's when I sort of, I'm like with the story. And that's the problem I then had with this story. The idea of this being at the birth of it, and it preventing it from escalating, started to feel a bit of a problem for me. It's been a 9-year experiment. They tell you repeatedly it's been going for 9 years. And Tom Cruise lost his son 6 years ago. So they're trying to give you a timeline of when things have happened, which again, I get, makes sense. That's fine. But all I can think about is this thing of like, well, what are they planning to do nationally? I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Again, I would rather this story have been almost the other way, or even later in the story, it is a national thing, and there is an agency that supports it, and there's a conspiracy within that sort of, because I could believe that there's a conspiracy of like, we do suppress these minority reports on a bigger scale because we're now talking a national system. And you have people protesting it. That's what I'd expect. Tom Cruise should start as a character that's like, no, I'm dedicated to this because, and he should be like a bit of a prick, really. He should be, all those protesters, they don't know what we're doing to save them. They don't understand all these people's lives we've saved, blah, 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 blah. Right. And he should be diehard into it. and be sort of against the protesters who were actually highlighting the ethics of having 3 people trapped in a semi-conscious state permanently in a pool,
I don't know how that is legal. I don't know how that was done.
No.
How that's even achieved.
Yeah. And then it should unravel for him, because it feels a bit easy for him, this whole thing of like, it's more about his son than it is about the precognition. So, but yeah,
the son stuff is like to grounded in emotion, right? I mean, and grounded in family. I mean, that's a very Spielbergian kind of thing, right? Except it's Tom Cruise, and it's impossible to, outside of Magnolia, to really care about Tom Cruise's emotions, because he kind of he has that weird kind of like homunculus, sort of like expression of not exactly jumping on the couch, but it's like, I know you're acting angry, but I'm not really sure you're angry. Like, are you putting it on? That sort of weird thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I kind of thought initially, and I still feel that I kind of liked that it was a limited program, because I thought, first of all, it's going against the grain of all of these sci-fi movies that are just like, in the future, crime is determined by precognitives, in a world. It's like, no, this is the pilot program. This error hasn't been exposed yet. It probably would be if it were national. So often you sort of see this stuff and it's national, and you say, really? Nobody thought about this? All of those kinds of like errors are more tolerable in a pilot program. And I think that's the thinking behind it. And I think that sort of works, although it occupies this weird space between sort of like a B movie that just wants to say, okay, there are people who see the future. Here's how this works. Go with it. It's really not important how any of that works. And it's not in this movie. But we want to explain it. We don't really have an explanation that is all that good, but we feel compelled to explain that stuff. Whereas it might be better that none of that stuff is the stuff that I remember, and both of us kind of have trouble figuring out how it works. Yeah. It might have just been better to just brush that off with a line of dialogue and get into the action or get into the visuals and the ideas that we like. Yeah,
because I think the thing is, like, say, I am nitpicking about some of the stuff of, like, it's fundamental how this film works, but you're right. This film kicks off the moment there's a ball is released, and it has a name on it, Leo Crow. Or Lee Crow. And then it sort of, Cruise is reviewing the footage. He's moving it around with his fingers, and he sees that he is the murderer. And so it kicks into events. It kicks off the series of events that will then lead to that murder. And I kind of like that process, because it does start to raise these questions of like, well, cause and effect. Like, well, if he hadn't have seen that footage, he wouldn't have gone into the investigation to look for it, wouldn't have gone on the run, which wouldn't have led him to the murder in the first place, which is, it's actually quite a clever setup. All right, you can ask that question. But it comes in, like, so it tells me, like, okay, well, that was going to happen. Is this sort of I remember when we watched Red Dwarf, it's that we did that. It's like, this isn't going to be, or this is what's happened. Well, it's not what would have happened is going to happen. It's what is going to happen but could have happened. It's this weird explanation of like, well, is this the actual future? And that's obviously the Minority Report. But the fact is, all 3 of them have seen this. Right. There is no Minority Report for this murder. Like, it's going to happen. But I'm like, well, yeah, but it was only going to happen because he saw this footage. And then they put this weird thing in later on to say, oh, it was a setup. I've got to die. When he finally tracks him down, and he's got these pictures of kids on the bed and stuff. And I love the fact that like they throw. There's a moment that when they actually do the investigation, when they even call out that, like Tom Cruise has sort of fallen for it, and then Colin Farrell, when he comes in, he's like, no, this is an orgy of evidence. Like, we never have this. This is bullshit. Yeah. This is clear.
Yeah.
But he falls for it, and you know, then this guy's, he starts reading his rights, and so he chooses. And I like that again when they're like, no, he's made this moment, like he knows that precognitive is fallible, and he is choosing to read him his rights and take him in rather than kill him. And the guy's like, no, you've got to kill me in order for my family to be taken care of. And all I'm thinking is like, who set this up? Like, I know you've got to know the system, but what has this person been paid to do? Just live in this flat for 4 days with a bunch of pictures of kids on the bed. Like, I don't know what you're going to die. You're going to die at the end of 4 days. But so what is it they're picking up on? This is the thing I keep struggling with. I'm like, so what is it? The precogs, because they talk about premeditation. You know, when they get a grate of, or the normal wood ball, it talks about premeditation, but it can't have been premeditated because he's never met him, doesn't know about him, and it becomes a crime of passion when he meets him.
Right.
Or would have done.
Yeah, absolutely. I kept wondering, like, what is the rate for pretending to be a serial child killer and then being killed for it? How do you do that? How do you compensate somebody for that exactly?
Yeah.
Who agrees to that?
Yes, it's really bizarre.
Yes. No, it is. I mean, I actually, that's sort of like, for me, where the movie goes off the track. I don't like the choice thing. I think I have to concede, like this is a wonderful setup, right? And even after that first film, that first little bit with the guy, then you get a sort of Starship Troopers, Total Recall, RoboCop sort of advertisement. It's like, oh, Spielberg is channeling Verhoeven here, and it works, and it's good, and you see all the retina technology. There's a lot of just thinking about the future in this movie that's really good. But that basic setup of seeing your name and seeing that you are the killer and of somebody who you don't know who it is. That's such a, Philip K. Dick twist. I mean, and the paradoxes of that. It's such a brilliant setup. And yeah, there's maybe a little too much action. I mean, I don't like that they, he's got to, get a precog, and it's like, I'm going back into the building, and, there's just sort of like too many steps for me, but I'm sort of okay with it. But I just, me, like every time we talk about this isn't time travel, but every time we talk about time travel, we talk about the sci-fi stuff. Maybe I'm the cynic, I just want, I like determinism. But I'm so, anytime I hear somebody say, yeah, man, but you've got a choice, dude. You've got a choice. I just think, oh my God, I've seen this scene a million times before. And then he just kind of like lets the timer elapse. And all of my annoyance that he's somehow able to avoid all of this technology, and he's the one guy. I like that he says everybody runs, and he knows he's not going to get away with it. But the idea that he has gotten away with it, and he is somehow the magic guy who's able to get away with everything, and also the one guy who said, no, I think I'm not going to do this. You mean to tell me like there wasn't ever a time where the cops got there late and the guy, didn't stab his wife, and they're like, wait a minute, this system, not so sure,
Yeah, because the thing is, one of the things you note in this film is they go to where they hold the prisoners. So these people that have been caught for these precognitive crimes, they're not just held in a cell. Like, again, they are sedated and held in some like Matrix level weird thing. Like they're put in a thing. And again, so there's no trial. There's no way of evaluating them. They just seem to be put into this thing. And one of the things is that when Tom Cruise is caught, spoilers, he is caught and put to this thing. He is prisoner 1,109. And I made a note of that because I was like, they've caught an awful lot of people. But that's an awful lot of premeditated and passion-driven murders in a 9-year period. That they've caught and kept people for. And all I could think of was like, I wonder what the pre-capture paperwork and Like, what's the appeal process for this? Because technically, what's the sentencing? Like forever? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, and that's part of the sort of implementation of this. I mean, I guess I can see that obviously there's the sort of ethical questions about precognition, and that's been brought up a lot in terrorism cases, that we now have a system where after 9/11, we bust lots of people for terrorism, and they are almost all people who have never committed any terrorist act, right? I mean, when the government says, we prevented this act, usually it's a bunch of guys shit talking, who then an FBI agent, sold them a rocket launcher, that never actually worked, never actually was used, and then they bust them for this ludicrous plan. So it's not always like that, but so the concept of precognition has come into those discussions. And again, great for a science fiction movie to have that effect and be a touchstone of ethical debate. Having said that, as you say, like, how would this work in the legal system? If that's a commentary on the history of new technologies being introduced in the legal system, that's actually quite good. Fingerprinting, DNA tests were not, the number one thing is that they're contaminated. And, even in cases where matches are not as clear, you have experts testifying and people buy the new technology, right? The jury wants to see that. It's a CSI effect, but so new technologies are believed to be more infallible. But having said that, I still don't know how this would push through the legal system. I mean, you've got a special legal system just for DC in which psychic evidence can be introduced at trial, apparently. And then
it doesn't appear to be a trial. They just go straight to these white tubes.
Well, it's just dread, right? I mean,
well, that's the thing as well. Like, how someone has, and I'm gonna, let's just use it. So someone has some sort of mental illness. They've got schizophrenia, and they have an episode, and in that episode they lash out at someone and they kill them completely by accident. Right? It's a schizophrenic break or whatever. Well, they've still killed someone, but in the current judicial system, they don't get slammed into something. They go, well, this person clearly has severe mental health issues. We need to give them treatment and make sure they're protected just as much as the public are. So we'll put them into a secure facility to get them treatment. Not, well, they killed someone, so we're going to shove them in a tube with everybody else. Like it seems so. There's a complete lack of compassion, which I don't know. It's almost the point of this film is, and the point of the aspect you talk about, the advertising campaign. You have these people roll up and they were waiting for me in the car park, and he was going to rape me and all this other stuff. And I'm like, that's great. They've saved your lives. They've prevented you from this trauma. But also, all they're doing is stacking people up in like a box.
Right, and without trial.
Yeah.
I mean, in the future, prisons are gooey, dystopian, weird places. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. It's very strange, and it's also so dystopian. And I think that this movie, in other respects, takes pains to not present either a sort of dystopian or utopian point of view. It's got cool technology, but people's lives don't seem tremendously changed or liberated by it. The colors are kind of gray. I mean, it's sort of a muted future. There are clearly sort of a criminal element and discontents, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of violence on the streets. It doesn't seem as if everybody is happy and at peace in this wonderful crime-free utopia.
No. One of the things that's interesting about this as well, you say about the crime-free utopia, it's not. They're addressing murder. However, part of this film still raises the fact that and our main character has a drug problem. So there's a raging drug industry, as well as black market medicine, and poverty is rife because they spend most of it, I forget what they call it now, But there's these like blocks of flats, massive, huge blocks of flats that they all seem to live in. So there's a massive overpopulation, rife with drug abuse and black market medical procedures that are pretty. I mean, I love that bit. It's fascinating. And the guy who plays the doctor is one of my favorite character actors ever. I'm like, all right, you're reducing the crime rate, but you're not really helping the wider society. Like, it's not like a golden or like a silver bullet to all these sorts of things. So it's an interesting choice to say, we're doing great work. Everything else is shit, but this is doing all right.
Well, but I think the movie doesn't have an interest in investigating those things, right? I mean, it's not a movie about sort of social strata in this society. It's not a movie about, it's curious to me, the drugs thing. I had forgotten that he was a drug addict. And that's kind of played off as a side effect of having lost his son. And so it's sort of emotionally important to his story. It doesn't seem that important to me. I mean, it's not played off as like, this is a social ill that, no, it's just a personal flaw. It's just in him. And in the same way, this is not a movie that's interested in investigating those slums. It's not interested in investigating the society at all. And that goes to the prisons, right? Yeah. That there is sort of there's a lot of imagination to the look and feel of things, and a lot of good thought there, but there's not a lot of imagination to give into how this society would work, including how a setting that you show, like the prison, would work.
Well, it's one of the, we said that this film's 2.5 hours long, and there's stuff in this film I would cut out, and they do a lot of things several times just to really sort of hammer things home. But the drug use seems like you say it's they're trying to give him depth, aren't they, to show that he's still racked with his grief and all this other stuff. But the way that it's played in the film, like, it should have a payoff, because they sort of there's several points where they show him using it. It's some sort of like inhalation drug, and there was another point. I like the fact that when he goes to his drug dealer, the guy's sold his eyes to fuel his own drug habit, which obviously that does pay off. So this one little eerie scene pays off. But the fact that he uses all these drugs, and then there's a commentary that his boss, played by Max von Sydow, knows he's on these drugs and sort of says, look, well, just be careful, because if they ask for a drug test, like, it's going to show up. And I'm thinking, oh, that's going to come back at some point. Maybe he'll have withdrawal symptoms, or that him having the drug in his system is going to give him away or something like that. Nope, never mentioned again. Never comes up, doesn't matter. And, it's the same with like the those holograms. He has these sort of like the holograms that he watches of his wife and his son. And again, like, I get it, it's good. But it's one of those that sort of like, it's used a little bit sort of for the detection later on, but doesn't really having it as a whole. Again, this feels like a whole Spielbergian thing. So look at the effect we can do. Yeah, there's smaller ways that you can do that would have had just as much impact and not wasted 10 minutes or 5, 7, 10 minutes of a film.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like that there isn't a payoff for some of that stuff, because I do feel as if I like when a movie has unexplained aspects, and when a movie sort of visualizes the future, and and sometimes it's sort of dumb stuff, and you're like, oh, look, holo pens, they're quantum pens or something. But I don't need everything to have a payoff, but I do think that the movie lingers too much on them. And I do think that there are too many things like the cars where it's like, it's an amazing scene, but I'm basically like watching Tom Cruise play Frogger in real life, and I don't believe it. It really looks like a 2-dimensional video game there.
Yeah.
Sort of, I don't know, one of those like block breaking things.
Yeah. I agree with you. Like, one of the things I would say is that one of those aesthetics of this film is, that car thing, that like pod car that goes vertical up walls and stuff, and then sort of attaches to your apartment building and all that kind of stuff. There was a part of me that's like, we're going to be watching Dread soon. But when those roads come off and there's all those cars flying past, like that's a view of Mega City 1. Like that I liked that cityscape was awesome. Like the design of that was excellent. I really enjoyed that. But then again, like they do some silly things that sort of verging on the daft. Again, like with the action set piece, talking about those cars. There's a scene in this, and it gave me echoes of Attack of the Clones. Fighting on a production line is one of those things where avoiding technology is become such a bit of a trope and such a cliche. And it's fine. Like, in fact, if anything, Cruise and Farrell do it better than they do it in Attack of the Clones. Because they don't,
which isn't hard. I mean,
that's true. But at least in this, within a second, Colin Farrell's character sort of realizes this is really dangerous and gets out.
Right.
And so I appreciate that. What I don't appreciate, or what I think is silly, is Cruise then stays there, and they're all like, he's going to be mashed up in this car because the seats have been plopped down, and then they're going to put down the carpet, and it's all automated, the whole thing. And then what happens is a car comes off the end of the production line, all painted and all shiny with all the interior done, and Tom Cruise sits up in the car. And even I'm like, really? Come on! Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a cool visual seeing that car get painted, right? They have this kind of smart spray paint, and the production line also looks. I mean, what is this? 2002? When is Attack of the Clones?
Same year, 2003.
Okay, well, I mean, the CGI looks a million times better in this than it does in Attack of the Clones. Attack of the Clones looks like it was rendered on a Nintendo 64. But, this looks so much better. But yeah, you're right. It's absolutely preposterous. And it's like yet another action set piece that kind of relies upon, and the thing that's frustrating is like that car chase scene, the car shutting down, Cruise getting out, trying to run. Everything about that is good, except it's got to gild the lily and do the Frogger bit, right? That assembly line, I mean, it's a cliche setting, but there's a lot that's good going on there. The performances are good, the CG is good, but it's got to gild the lily and have, Cruise be in this car and, have that dramatic moment. I don't know.
Oh, you said with gilding the lily. One of the things I noted watching this time, they can't finish an action set piece without a joke. Without a wink or a nod, a bit of a badum kind of moment. Like every single one. There's the whole thing with the jetpacks, which has got them all going around people's apartments, and they bump into the floor and the whole table jumps up, and then there's some bits that are good. It's okay, that's funny, but you're trying to have a tense action scene, where they go up through a construction pipe and it all catches on fire as they fly up. And there's some good bits. I'm like, it's well shot, it's well orchestrated. But then it ends with them going through the wall and some kids on there with a saxophone, and it sort of gets knocked out on the bed, and it's like, stay, he's like, oh, stay asleep or go to sleep or something. He rolls him over on the bed, and you're like, get the joke, dad joke number one. And then when he does the Frogger moment and he goes through the window, like Cruise ends up like crumpled up with his feet over his head, and he looks over, and there's a bunch of other contortionists in the room. And they're like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like, "Okay, now that's another joke, another gag." And then you have the gag of the car, and they do it again. Like he breaks into the police headquarters, the Precog headquarters, and I like the idea of the muscle relaxant that just makes his face all droop, which must be incredibly painful and other stuff. Like that's a great idea.
I like that too. Yeah, but
then he has to use his eyes. His eyes that he's had removed to get in. And again, I'm like, that's a cool idea. Oh, so far, I'm all on board with this. Oh, he's dropped him. He's chasing him down a corridor like Bugs Bunny. And then he just catches one before it falls down a grate. And it's like, I don't know what mood Spielberg was in. But again, it's that thing of like, stop undercutting things with humor. Like, you don't need it. We don't need... once maybe, but and also remember who, I think you've made a point, like remember who your star is, if you were doing a film, if this was Eddie Murphy, or I don't know who 2002 would be, but like, if you were doing like an Eddie Murphy film, or if this was The Rock,
Chris Tucker,
if this was, or Mel Gibson or someone like that, you'd probably get away with those jokes because it's that sort of like that charisma, that wink and that bit of a wink and a nudge. It doesn't work with Cruise because whilst he's a good action star, he's not funny.
Yeah, and I do think that there's this issue with tone. I mean, that's I hadn't sort of realized how repetitive. I had forgotten about that yoga scene, but yeah, I mean, who would remember that? It's so bizarre. But I mean, there are these moments where you think like, where I sort of think, is this just going into some sort of like weird, like artsy territory? Like, I mean, with the jetpacks, I think like, okay, we've kind of gone into B-movie gag stuff, right? And then, no, we're just back to normal stuff. And then with the yoga thing, I'm thinking like, is this kind of like a weird sort of like David Lynch indulgence? Like, is this, this wants to be Blade Runner, it's just got weird things, this is, no, it's just a gag. And in the same way, like I was saying about how it explains too much and yet explains too little. It doesn't, I feel as if there's a version of this that is a B movie that is just an action romp, and you don't really care that the conspiracy doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You get in, you get out, you see a splendid future, and I think I would like that better. And then there's a more like slow, nuanced, not giving explanations, but just moody sort of Blade Runner version of this that doesn't need to explain all that stuff, probably doesn't star Tom Cruise, and I think I'd like that one better. But there are these sort of tonal weird moments. There
is. I mean, one of the things we talk about tonal moments that don't pay off, and again, it's part of me wonders if it was producers, but I think maybe it was Spielberg not willing to go to the dark places that I think this film needs to go to, is the thing where he has his eyes replaced, which is a cool scene and a great concept. You've learned that this technology is based on his retina recognition, so he can't have his own eyes because his eyes are obviously, like his fingerprints. They're unique and they're recognized. So you have to have your eyes replaced, and you think, oh, that's actually really cool idea. But he can't do it anywhere else. He has to do it on the black market. And so they get in this sort of like this crazy doctor. He's called Dr. Solomon Eddy, played by Peter Stormare, who I love. Ever since Armageddon, and he played the cosmonaut in that, I've loved him in everything he's in. He's, everything, whenever he does a Coen Brothers film and stuff like that, like he's brilliant.
You are the first human being to ever say, ever since Armageddon, I found artistic passion.
Yeah. When we get to that film, and we may do season 20 or something. I love him. But in this film, like, there's a moment when he's sedated Cruise, and he's sort of saying to him, like, he's about to go under, and he says, like, he says, oh, well, being old friends, I'm going to do, we'll give you an old friends discount. He said, well, what do you mean? Do we know each other? And you find out that actually he has this really dodgy past of, he used to be a burns plastic surgeon for burns victims. And when they were under, he would set them on fire again before he did the thing, and it was to make videos of it. And you're like, that's really dark. Like, that's really weird. And it's sort of slightly played for laughs, and you're sort of like, okay. But like, he's ruined this guy's career. He's obviously lost his medical license. He's now working on the black market. It's all really seedy. And I think you're supposed to feel a tension that, like, what's he going to do to him? Like, is he going to do something to Tom Cruise whilst he's under, or leave some mark behind? Nope. If anything, he actually leaves him additional stuff. Mm-hmm. He actually says, as a benefit, because I feel like you're on the run from something, here's something that's going to help your facial recognition as well. And I'm like, he ruined your life. Like, you're clearly a horrible person, but like, I don't understand why you're helping him. Granted, he eats horrible food and stuff, but like, they do actually leave him milk and a nice sandwich and all sort of stuff. Like, and it's that scene where I'm like, as you say about tonals, like, this makes no sense. Like, you're setting him up to be like a little mini villain. Like, there's supposed to be this tension, but it goes nowhere. Like, nothing happens. it's pointless. It's a pointless part of the film.
Yeah, no, it's also one of the most enjoyable parts of the film. I think for both of us, I love the visual, not just under the water in the tub, but also just of him with the bandage over his eyes and the cords. One goes to the bathroom and one goes to the kitchen. And it's kind of absurd. This takes 12 hours to heal. It's like, I'm on a 36-hour timer. How convenient, it's just a little too video gamey, but yeah, it's charming and weird but it doesn't really belong in this film. And you're right. There's this sort of like dark thing. And I think one of the reasons I like that bit is that here is the cop who has been upholding the law, and now he's on the run. He's got to have a sort of like encounter with the dregs, right? That is scary and unsettling to him. And I think thematically that works. But why does he need to have that oh so very dark past? And then again, what is it? He's got the eyes belong to a Japanese man.
Yeah.
So there's this joke, it's his eyes. It's like, I forget his name, but he sees the screen say like something like, do you want a Coke, Mr. Nagatomi? Goes, oh, really? No. But again, it's a joke. It's like you've got that dark thing, and then minutes later, you've got this comedy thing, and it doesn't really matter that. Nobody's going to say, "Oh, really? Is that really your name?" Yeah, none. That's all. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and the thing is that some of the jokes, like you say, some of the humor is fine. It's that gilding of the lily, like you said before, though. Sometimes it just goes too far. One of the things you've just said as well about an alternate version of this that works is there's a film that I really like. And I did think about it when I was watching this film, a film called Strange Days, 1995 Strange Days, directed by Catherine Bigelow and starring Ralph Fiennes and stuff. And we will do that film one day. But that's got a very similar plot. It's about memories being, you wear a netting over your head that can absorb your memories, and then people can play them back. And Ray Fiennes plays a dealer in this who receives memories of a murder, and then it's sort of like he has to unravel this sort of like crime stuff. And I love that film. That's a great film, and that plays it completely straight. Like that gets really dark at times and stuff. And I think that was 1995, I think. I don't know. It just feels like Spielberg's taking a Philip K. Dick thing. I think he feels a bit like he's seen Strange Days and then gone, but I'm going to add some family fun in for it as well. And I'm like, maybe roll that back a little bit.
Yeah, and Spielberg is a weird nut that way, and clearly this is aimed at the general audience, right? This is trying to be an actioner, sort of, in the mold of The Matrix, right? Sort of an actioner with some good ideas, some philosophical resonance, some ethical questions, but at the end of the day, have it look good, and sell tickets based on, and to some degree, Total Recall is the same thing. Total Recall, is like a baby to me. I love it, but the movie that I kept thinking of is Steven Spielberg's other stuff. And I think it was just before this he did AI. And I think AI is the superior film of the two. I think AI is vastly underrated. There's no doubt this movie has had by far more influence, and AI is kind of relegated to, let's not talk about that one in terms of Spielberg's oeuvre. But in that one, he's channeling Kubrick. And so he sort of lets the plot meander, and scenes like Cruise with the surgeon would fit in something like AI. You can take that time. You can just let it be weird. You can let this just be sort of surreal and interesting in these subtle ways. But you said at the beginning, there is no context, right? There is no subtext. Subtext always becomes text within minutes.
Yeah.
That's what this movie wants to do. And in that movie,
in that version, there is a kind of like plasticity. There is a kind of, this weird tonal thing and a kind of like lack of subtlety and depth that irritates me, even as I think it's astounding how influential this movie is for a 2002 movie that, isn't counted as, Jurassic Park has far more influence and people will cite that. So I don't know. I think of his other movies.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's the thing you say about the plasticity of it. It feels very, again, watching it, like I say, it was fun. I enjoyed this film. I came away from it at the end thinking, yeah, that was good fun. It's not too bad. The thing is, I kept, the one thing is, throughout it, is there were scenes that kept making me think of other films. And I think that was my problem. I was thinking, like, this was 2002. This came out, and all I could think of was films from the 90s. And I thought of Strange Days. The bit with the surgeon made me think of Escape from LA, where they have the plastic surgeon played by Bruce Campbell, and the end showdown where they release all the information, and then he confronts him on the balcony. I was thinking of Harrison Ford as the fugitive. There's just all these moments. I'm like, they're good, but I've seen them done elsewhere, and I'm not sure if they were done better elsewhere. But I've definitely seen them elsewhere, and so I was like, it's almost like, the guy who wrote this. I'll be interested to see. I'm going to check actually, but like I said, it's sort of, I can imagine that the Dick story is. Obviously, I don't know if it's a short story, so I'm assuming it's very concise and it's quite, it's more about the sort of the sci-fi of it all rather than the satire and all this other stuff. So, but yeah, there's just sort of moments in this film and you go, they clearly didn't know what to do with this, so they've watched some other movies and taken bits out of it. So
yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying is sort of it gets to the sort of like very polished mishmash kind of feel that this movie has. And Spielberg's a master. I mean, he's able to polish this stuff, and so much stuff that shouldn't work works, or works passably well, or doesn't bother us. In another director's hands, we would have a lot of objections. And we have objections here, but yeah, I mean, it holds up. It's fun to watch. And I remember seeing it in the theaters and thinking the same thing and thinking, wow, I did not expect that to be that good. I don't know that I'm going to cite this ever again, but I had a fun romp. And, my heart didn't soar, right? I mean, there was sort of Jurassic Park is a kind of fun romp, but your heart kind of soars, right? I mean, you get that music and, those themes are more evocative. And I think here, the cruise plot and the sort of like family plot never affects me. And that ending feels so saccharine to me.
Yes.
The ending doesn't work for me.
Well, like I say that there's almost like there's a third act. They have all the action stuff and then they go into the Spielberg and sort of like, it's almost like an epilogue, isn't it? Like there's a whole, they get to Cruise's wife's house, and there is a moment in this actually I think is done quite well, more so because of the female actress who plays Cruise's wife more so than Cruise, because I think he plays it a bit too much. But he's got Agatha, the precog. They're in the house, and it's clearly the house they lived in with their son before he was taken. And she just says that I can feel the love in this house. And she is able to tap into an alternative. She was able to sort of like preconceive of an alternative future from the moment of him being 6. And she lays it out and she's like, he's 6 and this happens. Then he's 11 and this happens. And he goes off to college and he goes off. And I'm like, that bit's the girl who plays the precog plays it really well. Like, she's just like as if she's remembering. And then this happens, and then and that's really touching. And I can see why that would, as a parent, like break them down. They're like, this is the life he could have led. And she's not doing it to hurt them. She's actually saying that, look, I'm tapping into the emotion of this place. It becomes very sort of psychic. I'm tapping into the emotion of this place, and here's what you would have done as parents. Like you were. What she's telling them is, this wasn't your fault. You were good parents. And I kind of like that because it sort of resolves that for Cruz and the wife to say, none of this was a horrible, terrible incident that was not your fault. You were good parents, and this is the life he would have led. And I kind of like that he is given that at the end of the film as the character, and the wife as well. And I was like, oh, maybe they're going to resolve it here. Nope, you're going to go on to do this other bit where they're trying to have to now resolve the conspiracy. And so you get this thing of like, well, it's going to go national, so we have to prove that it works, and it's 100% by setting up one of our own. Like, I'm like, okay, yes. now I don't get it. But then also we've now uncovered this other thing with the Minority Reports of how you. So it introduces three sort of sci-fi concepts. You have the Minority Report, which is the alternative, which we know about. But then we also get murder echoes, where once the crime has been stopped, they get like an echo of it. So they sometimes see it again once it's been prevented. And you've got this idea of it going national, so one of your own's got to be set up, which makes no sense to me either way.
Yeah.
And so they then uncover this conspiracy of like the parents of one of the women or the mum of Agatha let her go because she was a sort of, a teen who had this child and had to give her up, blah, blah, but then came back to get her. So Max von Sydow killed her sort of 9 years ago, whatever. And used this echo effect to try and mimic. He set up another murder to be prevented, to then go use the echo to commit a real murder. And I'm just sort of like, do you know what you could have done? You could have just, they clearly can only see so far, their effects. Right. So, because that's part of the end of this film, they have a sort of a geographical circumference or whatever.
Yeah.
So, drive outside of that.
Yeah, there is a point where you sort of feel like how many murders are in a murderless city, right? First of all, there sure are a lot of people in that prison, but secondly, like the people running this program and everybody involved is so ready to murder people, and there's it's like this idea of murder that is just kind of like, well, that's the one crime that we can solve. No, that's the crime we're all going to be resorting to. Yeah. Everybody up and down the hierarchy, we just love our killing. It becomes a little sort of like thematic, like here's my penguin mobile. Like it's just a little too on point.
It is. I mean, this whole thing of because he says that once the cognitives get switched off because Agatha's at the pool, like he utilizes that to kill Colin Farrell's character, and I kind of like that idea. But there's also a great moment in this film about this because Colin Farrell sort of comes in and he's the one because he's coming in to represent the Bill Barr, your general. Whatever it's called,
our Attorney General.
And so he starts poking holes in this whole justice system, a bit like what we're doing, really. And I kind of like that he does that. But there's a great moment where Cruz has sort of seen his own himself committing this murder, so he's trying to escape, and Farrell sort of steps into the elevator with him, and he has a confrontation with him, and he puts the gun under Cruz puts the gun under Farrell's chin, and he's like, I don't hear an alarm for a red ball anywhere, so you're not clean up there. And then the alarm goes off, and you just see the panic in his face. He's like, oh, this could be it. Something's gone wrong. And so it's, if anything, to me, sort of Colin Farrell's probably one of the most interesting characters in this film because, he's come in he's come in as the skeptic, and as an audience member, you're supposed to see him as almost not so much the villain, but maybe a sort of a bit of an antagonist. And then, but halfway through, I'm like, no, I think you're right. Like, you seem to have a grasp on this. Like the way you're going about it's not right, but you've got a pretty strong grasp on the fact that this isn't all sunshine and roses. And so, yeah, it's interesting that, like you say, by the end of the film, they've sort of completely pulled their own structure apart. And you do sort of look at it and go, this was all avoidable. Like
maybe let that guy audit you, and maybe we would have found this whole Minority Report problem and all these echoes. And I mean, yeah, it's one of those like convoluted plots where you say, was this necessary? Really, that was your plan? like there was a simpler way of going about this. I know you need this for dramatic effect, but I mean, I do like the Colin, and I think I like Colin Farrell personally. I mean, I think he's a fun guy to watch on screen. I think I like him more than Cruise. The Total Recall remake is not a good movie, but I would like to see the roles reversed in this movie. I think that would be interesting.
I agree, actually. Colin Farrell's one of those people at this point that he has that kind of sort of cheeky charisma that would have got away with those jokes.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he can still do kind of like the tough guy, but he feels like he can do the tough guy, but he also is able to do sort of like fish out of water. Like part of the problem with Tom Cruise is he seems to believe that I almost feel as if he I'm not going to talk about Scientology, but I almost feel as if he believes that he has to always be confident and always portray confidence. And so when he's acting, he's thinking of himself and how he needs to be confident as an actor, even when he's playing somebody who's sort of at a loss.
Yeah.
And I there's this odd kind of like awareness of him acting and of a kind of, he doesn't come off as somebody who really is confident. He sometimes comes off as really professional and it does work. But oftentimes he comes off as somebody who, there are those actors who, especially male actors, who struggle with anything that doesn't fit their kind of like tough guy image that they want to present. And this is sort of like his version of that. Whereas Farrell can do the tough guy, but is not insecure about seeming like a fish out of water or scared or anything. No,
and I think when you look at when you look at their sort of like back catalogue and future catalogue of films that these two do, you can very much see that one, is probably fueled a little bit by sort of toxic masculinity, and the other one is actually quite a good actor who can do different kinds of things. I'm slightly convinced. With Cruise, he's doing these bigger and bigger stunts. He's always doing it himself. He's learnt to fly a helicopter. He's hold his breath underwater for more than 3 minutes and all this other stuff. Whenever I watched it again, thinking about other things, I was watching this, and you see him hanging on to that car, and I'm like, if this was now, that wouldn't be CG. They'd be like, we've built this car and this ramp, and Cruise is going to hang on to it for 20 minutes. I swear he is going to die when they go to space for Mission Impossible 12. And he's a bit like, you remember in Red Dwarf with Confidence and Paranoia? Like his confidence, like, I'm Tom Cruise, I can breathe in space.
Yeah.
Helmet, boom. That's when Tom Cruise dies. Tom Cruise dies when he believes he can breathe in space.
In a way, if they had done that hanging onto the car scene with actual cars, it would have had to be more believable because that is just a rounded surface. Having jumped on stuff that I shouldn't have jumped on in my life a lot, and fallen off lots and lots of things. I can't believe anyone would be brave enough to make that jump. But also, if you did, you'd just slide right off. Especially at those velocities and stuff. And I'm always so irritated. I know it's such a cliche, but I'm so irritated at. It's like we all have our sort of bugaboos based on our own experience. As somebody who's cracked my skull open, before, really, split my skull almost in half. I hate watching people like take a fall and they just like stand right back up. I'm like, no, this is not the way this works. And maybe if I didn't think as a young man I was so immortal, maybe I wouldn't have taken those chances. But yeah, so I mean, I'm always irritated at people hanging on to things way longer than our arms. It's one thing if you really want to hang on to something, have a handcuff and tie it, connect it to something. You'll hang on fine. Your wrist is going to hurt like hell. But no, people holding on to ledges. No, people grabbing somebody else's hand. Yeah, you better pull them up in about 30 seconds, or somebody's going to drop them. We just do not hold on to objects like this.
No, we're just not designed to, are we? I mean, you have to be. I mean, Cruise probably do quite well because he's incredibly athletic, incredibly fit. But like, you know, and you have to be built like maybe Stallone or someone like you know, and even it's funny because say I remember there's a thing of an interview with Stallone and Schwarzenegger from the early 90s, and Stallone was sort of going through one of his fitness regimes he was doing for a film, and he was talking about stuff, and Stallone and Schwarzenegger was like, "Yeah, I can't do that. Like, I'm not built for that. I'm built to lift heavy things. He's built to do this." And it's sort of like, they were just talking about it, and I was like, "Yeah, Schwarzenegger couldn't pull himself up on a ledge, but Stallone probably could." You know, it's so you look at it and you go, "Normal people can't do these things."
Yes.
So yeah.
And especially, I mean, I get like Tom Cruise is, you know, an action star, but I don't know. I have a problem with a lot of these action stars, and I didn't growing up. You know, I still love Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, I can't help myself. I love the guy. It's like he's better than Shatner, right? I mean, Shatner is apparently just a horrible person, but I love watching him. You know, Schwarzenegger, I mean, he had no business being governor, but, you know, I mean, I love the guy. I love watching him. I love seeing tapes of him talking about politics. And Stallone, you know, was the guy I liked less, but I mean, he's done some serious good movies, you know. I mean, he decided to be a real actor. You know, in a way, Schwarzenegger did too. Bruce Willis. I mean, Bruce Willis is the sort of everyman action star from that era that, you know, yeah, he's gotten a little full of himself, but he's still so much fun in trashy, you know. Red One is just a lot of fun. You know, I love him in the second G.I. Joe. I mean, you could just throw Bruce Willis and stuff, and as long as it's not horrible, cough, Die Hard sequels, you know, he can just be so much fun. And I don't really believe that he's a super macho tough guy, but he's so much fun. I've never bought Stone. I've never bought. I've never bought him, and I've also never bought Liam Neeson, you know, from Taken. I just feel like there's this whole generation of like action stars where I'm like, yeah, you know, your body's not built for that, you know.
Yeah, it's this thing, and the thing is, it's all about. There's a charm to it as well. You know, when you look at like Stallone or Schwarzenegger and Willis and a few others, like, you know, there's a reason they got away with it, is because it was always done with a bit of tongue in cheek. You know, there's a bit of a glint in their eye that's sort of like, yeah, I'm doing this, but I know how silly this is as well. Like Commando is a prime example of this thing of like, you know, or rather, if we're going to keep it in the sci-fi realm, I mean, you know, there's films like The Sixth Day, or there's a few other films where sort of, especially in the 90s, you know, or Demolition Man's another good example where, you know, it's Demolition Man's silly, and everybody in it knows it's silly, and they're playing it silly, and you go, you know, it's this sci-fi idea, and we will talk about that because I love that film. But they're like, yeah, it's daft, but like, you know, so you get away with the charm, and you know, when sort of like Schwarzenegger's playing an everyman, like in The Sixth Day, and you're like, but he's 6'4" or he's 6'2", and he's built like that.
Yeah.
Ignore that. Don't worry about that. Move on. It's the same. And the thing is with Cruise, like he has a certain charisma, and he can do, like, I love the Mission Impossible films, and I think he's actually grown into doing these things. At this point, he's too earnest. He's trying to be too earnest. And I think, you know, Spielberg isn't. Spielberg is trying to do a fun sci-fi adventure film with some themes thrown in for good measure that he's not really focusing on. Cruise thinks he's doing a different film, I think.
Yeah.
You know,
no, I'm with you.
I get that he's probably read the book. You know, he's read the Philip K. Dick story. He's probably read some additional stuff. He's then read the script and gone, yeah, this is going to be sort of like, you know, a sci-fi satire on this and this. And Spielberg's going, no, you're going to be jumping off CGI cars. And so, yeah, I do think Cruise is making a slightly different film to Spielberg.
No, I think that's true. I wanted to get back to like that the family issue that you brought up, because it seems to me, you know, Cruise's character and it is connected for me because I think that Cruise's character feels very hollow and superficial to me. And I think that that's surprising in a Spielberg movie, because Spielberg is, I am a fan of the Transformers movies, including the Bay stuff. That first one, I know exactly every moment that is Spielberg's influence. Every time you see a character just kind of humanized and you get it, he is so good at, like, Jurassic Park. Everybody's got an arc. Everybody's got something they're torn up about. And Spielberg's able to, in a few lines, he lets the camera speak for characters and convey an emotion. He's just so good at that. And it's surprising to me that the kernel of that story is there with, I lost my son. Most marriages break up afterwards. And I sort of became obsessed with stopping this. I mean, this is the story of Batman, right? And then at the end, he's sort of reunited with her, and they sort of decide to have another son. And you see she's pregnant. This all happens in like 2 seconds. And it seems that is, as you point out in that scene, like, it's thematically connected to the concept of precognition and the concept of destiny and having a choice, right? That we can, this happened. This seemed like fate. Like, we couldn't recover from this, and we were broken. And all I knew how to do was to stop these murders. And now I realize, through this exploration of the entire film, that we are not just prisoners of fate. We can write our own futures, and not in a dumb kind of, Terminator ending monologue, but we can try again. There is hope, and our maybe I've been really obsessive. I mean, there's a character arc there that thematically is connected to the whole movie. The skeleton of that is there. And I can't for the life of me understand why Spielberg, of all people, doesn't string that through and make that pay off.
Well, I was just having a look at Google then of, like, the most successful actors of 2002, as you were saying, because you're right. Because the thing is, like, there's some really cool stuff in this, and that thing about the family, like, it's prime Spielberg. Going back to E.T. and everything before it. It's sort of, so why not? Cruise is the the fourth most successful actor of 2002. So there's a part of me that says, at this point, he was the golden boy. You were kicking off the Mission Impossible franchise from the late 90s into the 2000s. He was doing a bunch of other stuff. I think while Spielberg still was high up on his game, I can believe there would have been well, this is what I want to do, and this is the story I want to explore. And then Cruise saying, as you said, not allowing himself to be seen as anything other than the tough guy, saying, no, I want it to be this neo-noir cop on the run. Here's all the action sets we're going to do. And I can imagine that being the case, because there is a chance to explore this. Especially, one of the things I was most surprised about is that he doesn't go and get Agatha sooner. It takes way too long to get to that point because of all the other action setup and all this other stuff. Like that should come a lot quicker, and it should almost be a bit. Again, thinking of films that happened before this, Mercury Rising, or this sort of Lone Wolf and Cub, or whatever idea, him re-engaging with his parental, make her younger for a start. Like, she's meant to have been a pre-cook for 9 years. Make her a pre-teen, not pre-teen, make her a mid to late teen. She seems to be in her 20s, I don't know, but make her a teenish. Allow him to re-engage with that parental feelings through having to protect her. But she almost becomes a vessel, like, throughout the whole thing. Like, she's just there. I mean, there's quite a cool scene where they escape the mall, where she's going, there's a homeless guy, throw some money to him, hide behind these balloons, grab that umbrella. And I like that. That's quite clever. She's tapping into her precognitive powers. And again, there's a part of me that's going, is that the actual future? Is she telling him, or is she making the future by recognizing what's going to happen? But either way, I like that idea. But she just becomes this sort of like vessel for him to propel forwards, but not the plot or anything. And I'm like, why is he doesn't engage with her or connect with her in any way? And I'm like, That's the Spielberg thing I was expecting. That is missing. There's a big emotional hole for the second act, and I'm like, that's really bizarre for a Spielberg film.
Yeah, I mean, I love that phrase, emotional hole, and you know, we have to do ET one of these days. I saw ET relatively recently, and it hadn't been like I hadn't seen it in like 20 years, and I thought, yeah, that's kind of a cliche, right? I mean, you know, you're trying to sell Reese's Pieces. I mean, it's Spielberg. It's, you know, sort of a, you know, middle class auteurism, you know, and I just cried. You know, there are so many just heartbreaking, you know, the ability to make an extraterrestrial story about divorce,
and
about just the heartbreak of divorce. How does he not? You know, how did he turn in this movie? You know, for that, I love that phrase, emotional hole. And there's this weird thing going on with gender in this movie, with that it's not like on the surface. But, you know, Cruise has this kind of like uber confidence. All of the men are like schemers. You know, I mean, there's the guy with who puts the eyes in, but I mean, he's very good at what he does, right? I mean, everybody, all the men are just kind of schemers and super confident and everything. And the women are just kind of empty vessels. And literally that is, I mean, his wife should be the most characterized and sort of is, but it's his journey to come back to her, right? It's like, I decided to be back with my wife again. So boom, I got her back. And she's pregnant again. Problem solved. You know, like she doesn't have any psychic residue. And the same thing, you know, like you said with the precog, that, you know, she is almost like cargo to carry around, and the fact that she has had a horrible life doesn't really enter the picture, except as a fact that you know, but it's not characterized in any way. And then you see them, the movie ends with them on this little like island somewhere. And, you know, it's like, oh, it's Little House on the Prairie. You know, is that what they wanted? You know, what I mean, I don't know anything about them.
One of the weirdest parts, that's a really good point, actually, about the women in this film. Because one of the weird things is, I mean, this is one of the most male and one of the most white films ever. Like, you know, it's basically Cruise, Farrell, and Sidow are the main characters. And you do have a black actor sort of playing, but he's sort of like, he's just, I don't know, in command. And then you've got the guy from who pops up in everything, the sort of curly-haired sort of big dude. You're like, fine. But every time you come across a female character in this film, like, they're the ones with the common sense. Like, there's a whole scene where Cruise tracks down the woman who's like a geneticist or a scientist who created the precog, pre-crime, they call it. And when she breaks it down, I mean, I like the fact of, like, you know, she's secluded in this thing and like, made these genetic plants and stuff that do all this other stuff. Like, I love some of the ideas and the effects there. It also feels a little bit like Spielberg trying to tap into Blade Runner by having the sort of this crazy sort of slightly crazy scientist who's got this sort of god complex. But again, she's the one that points it all out. She's the one that lays it out for him and is like, no, all this is some old dude who doesn't want to let go of the thing that he created. Like, that's all it boils down to. Like, yeah, I let this go because it was stupid. Doesn't work because of these things, the Minority Reports. So I got out. But all this is like, you want to protect it because of your masculinity. He wants to keep hold of it because it's, you know, it's his child. And then you've got some other dude coming in to take it over from you because there's money in it. It's basically saying, like, look at all you stupid men. now bugger off. And I was like, that's bizarre for a film to literally sort of stop halfway through to say, you're all incredibly stupid characters. This whole plot is really chauvinistic. Bye.
Yeah, I never thought of it like that, but that is true. I mean, that is what she's saying. And yeah, you know, it's true that a lot of action movies are really men playing games, right? I mean, it's the chess match between the cop and the killer, right? You know, yeah, and half the time you're like, yeah, you know, you don't really need to do this, you know, or we're a heist movie. We're gonna rob that casino, and men are gonna protect it. And why are we doing this? I mean, it's men doing silly stuff. But yeah, I mean, you're right. There is this character, and I like that character too. I'm kind of a fan of. It's a cliche, but I'm such a fan of like characters in greenhouses saying deep things. It's just I know it's a cliche, but I mean, there are a lot of shows that do that. But I love it. There's something about using the hands to prune and garden that gets at sort of that metaphor of creation, but also destruction and nature. So I like all of that stuff. And then you go right back to sort of, this sort of superficial macho male battle in which, women seem to have no agency whatsoever.
Well, there's even a follow-up to that when Colin Farrell tracks down Anderton's wife, Tom Cruise's character's wife, and he actually says to her, like, so Farrell's character now knows that Cruise is on these drugs and all this other stuff, and she says, well, yeah, because he lost his son. And he goes, well, you lost him too. And you seem all right. And it's sort of this thing, again, like, I'm not sure it's supposed to be, but it's sort of pointing out going, yeah, he fell apart. You seem pretty squared off. Like, I'm assuming you've got grief, but you seem relatively stable and you're dealing with your grief. Why is that? And it's sort of, again, it seems to point at these facts of going like, yeah, all these male characters, they're all broken. There's like this whole sort of thing is a bit broken, and we're not going to talk about that. But I'm going to let you know that we clearly know that.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I sort of took it as I think you're obviously correct. I sort of took it as Tom Cruise and these male characters, and I think socially, men are given space to go off and be angry. And there's this weird way, I mean, getting back to sort of like Cruise's confidence and acting, and we were talking about sort of machismo there. I've had so many conversations with people about men and emotions and how we have the stereotype that sort of women are emotional and men are cold and logical. No, men are just as emotional, but we have been trained that anger is not really an emotion, right? So if you get frustrated by something and a woman tears up, guys will think, oh God, she's crying again. Why are women so emotional? In the same room, a guy hits something and punches the coffee maker, and everybody's like, dude, it's going to be okay. That scene is somehow a rational expression. Yeah. So she's gone through her process. She seems healthy and, she's grieving. She's not pretending that this was a good thing or that she's over it, but she stayed in the same home. She seems calm and collected. And he's given this kind of space to, go and Hulk out. And the entire movie, in a sense, is his experience hulking out and going crazy and doing these crazy things and then journeying back to her. Or it should be. I mean, that should be the emotional core of the film. But yeah, I mean, it's strange that like the movie doesn't seem to condemn him for that. She says, oh yeah, she has compassion for him. He doesn't seem condemned. And there is this odd way in which like he's given that space, that emotional space to do that without condemnation. And that's part of what frustrates me about the end is that he has been away for years doing this thing that ultimately has been proven to have been a disaster, locking people up, for nothing, working for utterly corrupt murderers. And all of this was a farce. All of this was a complete and utter cock up. And, but honey, I realized it. So I'm going to put a baby in you and it's all going to be fine. There is a kind of male entitlement there.
I agree. But it's not something I usually think of as being Spielbergian. Like maybe I do think of it with Cruise. I do think of that with sort of Tom Cruise and associate it with many of his films. Even like the Mission Impossible films is very sort of, driven by that. But yeah, I do like that end little monologue of sort of where they basically say sort of like the pre-crime experiment was ended after 9 years. I'm like, It's not an experiment. That's a lot. That's a decade of someone's life, and all this other stuff. And then they were all let go. And this is the thing I find interesting. They were all let go, pardoned and let go, and some were kept a tab on. Yeah,
right.
And again, my brain's going, oh, this is so black and white because the guy that was arrested at the start of the film, let him go. Like, you interceded and prevented a crime of passion. He has no history of this. Right. Clearly his marriage is over. I think he has the right to go and sort his life out. Like, he's probably not got a job anymore and he hasn't got a family. Like, let him go sort his life out. However, there will be people in that 1,000 or 1,100 people that this may have not been the first murder that you could have caught them for.
Right.
If you could have gone, we caught this guy because of precognition, but he's also committed 7 other murders in another state that we didn't. Well,
that we couldn't catch.
Yeah, don't let him go. Like, that. Yeah. Put him somewhere else.
It's also part of the, talking about how does this sentencing work, right? How does this jail work? The movie is totally uninterested in thinking about any of that. Yeah. And so I find myself thinking the same thing and thinking, and then I think you pardoned everyone. First of all, did they need, I guess they need a pardon. We still have people in jail for, minor drug offenses that are legal now. I guess you do need that pardon, but there's going to be financial settlements, right? Every single one of these people is going to have a civil action against the state. Yeah. They're going to be paid out. And here again, they're going to be protesters, who say as you say, some of these people, that's fine. But, we live in a society today that loves to be tough on crime, right? The last thing you want is to release a killer or, a wife beater or something. And, there's going to be protests. There's going to be politicians screaming, if elected, I will throw them back in jail. We're going to make America precognitive again.
But again, it's this. It doesn't feel, because I know Spielberg's not. He's not. His films aren't always high level intellectual. Like, he'll address certain topics, and this is supposed to be a fun sci-fi romp. But I do get this idea of just releasing 1,000 people back into society, just an open floodgate is, well, firstly, unless you, like you say, you've got to give them some sort of compensation to get them back on their feet. There'll be some sort of trauma involved in this because if you notice, one of the things that they do when they arrest them, they apply like a piece of headgear. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It goes on, and it acts as like a neural dampener. Like, all of a sudden, that's it. They're switched off. Some of these people, the last thing they may remember is their bedroom or being in a car or something else. All of a sudden, they're like, "Oh, Jesus Christ! What? 7 years later? What? And I'm
who's president again?
Yeah. Who am I? Where do I live? Where's my family? Like this, all this sort of." The people it just feels like they try to go, we solved this problem and we righted those wrongs. No. You just dropped like a massive bomb on this. Like it's, and maybe it's just because we're older, we live in more complicated. Well, we now recognize we live in more complicated times. But I'm pretty sure when I watched it, I'm pretty sure that when I watched this in 2002, I'll be like, oh, that's a good ending. Now I'm just like, wow, you just walked away from this absolute shitstorm, didn't you?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that in 2002 I thought, that's pat. That's overly pat, and I wasn't as happy with the conclusion. But now I think, as you say, politics is not a binary, right? One of the things that irritates me is it's like, are we going to do this program or are we not? That's not the way anything works. Right. We're going to negotiate, I know it's a pilot program and you shut it down, but it's going to continue in some way, right? There's going to be precognitive research. There's going to be, an attempt to resurrect this. There's going to be an attempt to keep some of those people behind bars or whatever. all of these are kind of more interesting questions to me than, in a way, the plot of the film. Although it's a good movie, but yeah, I mean, it is that kind of like, oh, I hate it when movies sort of presuppose like, well, we expose that politician as a murderer, so all of his fans hate him now, right? Like, or he said something rude and was exposed to be a hypocrite, and it's like his entire crowd of supporters goes boo, boo, and you just realize like, oh, it's over. No, that's not the way things work, right? Some people might peel off, but so it is that kind of like, just overly pat sort of, understanding of, we just shut it down, and everybody agreed, right, that we should shut this down. In reality, we have people talking about it's great to incarcerate people without trial, and if they the charges were thrown out, that's okay because they're probably bad dudes who did something else. Literally, people say this, right?
Yeah. Well, pre-crime feels like a Republican wet dream, to be perfectly honest. I can't believe any Democrat would be sort of like, we're going to, without trial and without actually having committed a crime, we're going to put people in prison. Like, I can't believe that would ever take place. But, you say about being pat and about being a bit silly. In the finale, like I say, when there's a moment, again, it's little odd choices that I find bizarre in this film. When Max von Sydow's plot and conspiracy is unveiled, and you get some of this precog video footage of him killing the woman, which is fine. It's there as evidence. It's accepted for all these other crimes, so clearly it's damning on him as well. But the fact you then see his wife swoon and faint, I'm just, again, it's like that gilding of the lilies. I'm not sure if that's supposed to, because she proper goes, oh! It's proper like 1930s swooning. I'm like, I'm not sure if that's supposed to be a gag or just like tonally, like the editing on this is off. Like, it's bizarre.
Yeah, that is very weird. It is just another one of those sort of tonal moments that I can't make heads or tail of. No,
it's a bizarre one. But yeah, it's one of those that I had fond memories of this film. I still do. I still think it's a good, fun sci-fi romp. I think there's some good set pieces in it, but it really doesn't hold together as a story.
No, I don't think it holds together as a story, and I do think that there is a version of this that is just an amazing movie. I mean, whether it is the sort of like B movie we both like, B movies and would be happy with that, or a sort of like artsy Blade Runner-esque kind of thing. I think both of those would be great transformations. You could take out the clutter. You could, have that Spielbergian, emotional core and sort of just, massage that and get that to working. And, you can downplay the conspiracy plot being tied to the entire origins of this. This is just we don't even need to get rid of the precogs. I mean, that doesn't need to be the happy conclusion. There can just be doubt. And we can be left in the ambiguity of, I do, by the way, think the, Democrats would sign on for it. I can easily understand that. But when I think about it being used by, Republicans, I would think of it being used as like a way to just lock more people up, or whereas I think, Democrats are more focused on, we can achieve a more utopian society, and let's stop this stuff before it happens. But I do think there's a great version of this movie, it's an interesting movie. It's a fun movie. It raises lots of points.
I think that's the thing. It's almost like it sits in that middle ground, doesn't it? Like, if you were to, and it sounds bad, but if you were to lower this down to being that sort of like pulpy B movie thing, like there's a really fun, silly film in here that, like, you could have like, a bit more, that would be a bit more jokey, and like you really go all at it with the action and that sort of thing. And maybe like a Verhoeven kind of film, or I don't know, someone like that. Or you elevate it up and you get like Ridley Scott, Christopher Nolan, someone like that, and really try and dig into the sort of themes, and you have something a bit more that's going to really sort of push on this sort of the thematics and the ethics of this. Unfortunately, I think this sits in that middle ground where it doesn't really achieve either. It's fine, it's fun. Like you said, I'm probably not going to watch this or reference this again, but it sort of sits there as it's all right.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I do, just as a final thought, want to say how amazingly influential this is. I mean, watching, like, it is amazing for a movie that both of us are like, this is good, but it's not. I mean, it's not Blade Runner. I mean, it's not 2001. It's not. It's not some of the movies that we like that think deserve more credit. I think that the swooshing around the UI interface, that's not only in Iron Man. I mean, we're designing real interfaces that do this, with augmented reality. I think the pre-crime thing comes up a lot. I think that this has just been very influential and in a kind of shocking way, considering that, it's a lesser Spielberg sci-fi movie.
No, it's true. I think from an aesthetic point of view, though, you can look at this and see, or a visual effects point of view, you can definitely see model types and effect types used again and again. And I think that sort of, like you said, that UI sort of interface that is just one. The driverless cars, the way they're shaped and the way they work, repeated over and over again. Even those the guns, the spinny round sort of like energy weapons, that sort of thing, I've seen again and again. All cool. Like, there's some great bits in this. Yeah. Weirdly, what I find is one of the funny things is this is one of the things you can tell sort of when something is made. I find now, because what you find is you can find films that are pre-smartphone and post-smartphone.
Yeah.
And so, in this film, this is sort of 2002. So, was it the first iPhone came out? Was it 2004, 2005, something like that, early 2000s? At no point is, other than the Retina technology, is communication devices picked up. They have like a little earpiece, and that's it. But no smart device technology. Now, every future thing has got some kind of smart technology. In fact, actually, thinking about it, what film is it? It is actually the Total Recall remake.
Yeah.
With Colin Farrell, has it built into their hand, and they can project them from their hand and stuff. So this smart technology, sort of like the moment we got smartphones, everyone was like, "Oh, that!" We never really predicted that. Now we've got to build that into all of our futures.
It's funny because this movie does kind of predict facial recognition software and customized ads, right? I mean, I'm not sure to what extent like our web ads were even customized back in 2002. Now it's just like you see these things and you say like, why is it that you think I need Viagra? Like what have I looked at? What website have I gone to that is demographically correlated to this? I mean, it's all custom, and I love that. Obviously, we're going to move into that at some point. I think it's great with augmented reality, but at the same time, when China's pushing facial recognition, this is coming. It's not going to be eyes, but we have a similar style of technology happening. That's way ahead of its time. But as you say, like, not only does it not have smartphones, but how much of the chase plot makes any sense? These plots when you have smartphones just collapse instantly.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I noticed in this as well, which is now like ubiquitous across all sci-fi films, is they have the spiders in this, and they're a cool little design. And they, and again, I noticed they have 3 legs. Sort of pre Spielberg's War of the Worlds and all sort of stuff. No drones.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
And now, like, every sci-fi, in fact, one of the films we're going to talk about in this later on sort of has drone technology as all part of its opening scene. So, yeah, it's one of those things that I think, they can obviously, I know times change, but I think it just shows how old I am getting, or how old I realise I am, that like a film where I'm like, Minority Report, that's a pretty recent film. And you go, no, it's almost 20 years old and didn't have smartphone technology in it or drone technology. And I'm like, wow, yeah, that's
what makes me feel old is I realize like 2002 is technically an old film. I don't want to realize that, but I do. What makes me feel so old is that it never occurred to me that this is not a smartphone future. That just doesn't even occur to me. I'm not even thinking about smartphones and drones. I use smartphones every day, but I love technology. I'm using this stuff, but it just seems like, oh yeah, that's a vision of the future that's pretty solid. Oh wait, yeah, a kid comes into the room and just says like, Daddy, why are they doing this? Why is this so dumb?
This is the thing, and I think this is where the thing. Like, you talk about sort of the technology. We now have Alexa in our house. We've got two dots, Alexa dots downstairs, and I've sort of been holding off, but we were sort of like, okay, we're going to get it. We've had them for a week, and Alex and I are still. I still go through the app. I've got the bits and pieces on my phone. I'm looking at it and going, okay, that's how it works. And I've sort of got it going like, Alexa, tell me a joke or play some music. Ellie, pretty sure she's having full-blown conversations with this artificial intelligence now. She's 7. And, it's sort of like, to her, it's just like, yeah, she's the first, in the living room, she's the one that figured out that she can control the TV using Alexa. Like before, so kids, like you said, in technology, like nowadays, like it's just leaps and bounds. And
who's ever listening, no matter what age they're at, this will happen to you. Like we're sort of in middle age.
That's right.
And my parents are. I still marvel at like they cannot use smartphones. They can't get Bluetooth to work on anything. I mean, my mom is scared of anything that talks to her. I'm like, keyboards are going away, and she's like, that's terrifying. It's like, you're using the same thing. But then you do get to this, and I used to just be able to pick up anything. I mean, I was overclocking a computer the other day, so I know what I'm doing. But I still will look at a user interface on a new device and think, I don't know where to start. And I know that if I were 7, I would know where to start, and I just dive in, and and I'd say, yeah, that's obviously intuitive. Yeah, so it happens.
I'm interested to see, and it's something. It might be. I'd be interested in. I'm sure that someone has done it, but I'd like to do it myself. I'd like to get like go back to maybe from when I was young, so from early 80s, and get sci-fi films that of a similar ilk, sort of like those sort of that look at this kind of future. And just put them and watch them so I can see sort of go like, so what was the 80s future look like? What did the 90s future look like? And then you can keep going through it and saying, okay, well, that's interesting to see how the futures have changed to represent the changes in technology that have come since. Because, I mean, it has changed like quite dramatically.
Yeah. And I'm a huge fan of retrofuturism, and like, I mean, Sky Captain doesn't quite work, but I mean, I love that stuff when I'm, in comics or in film.
Yeah, no, I actually quite enjoy that film. Sky Captain is a good fun film. That was an experiment as well. I mean, that's another thing that went away quite quickly, is that it's a full green screen film as well. That was early 2000s, like Sky Captain, 300, the Star Wars prequels, that sort of thing. Yeah, I'm glad that actually died. Cool. Anyway, but that's it. I think we've sort of considered just before we started. You were like, I'm not sure what we're going to talk about on this one.
well, as you correctly said, everything it becomes context, or it becomes the text itself. So, I'm like, I've got a little point about gender, but that's about it.
But it all comes out in the end. So again, I've enjoyed talking about Minority Report. The first time Spielberg's been on our show, and I think possibly the first time Cruise as well, but they'll probably be back at some point. Again, what you said, AI, I think might be one I'd like to sort of revisit. I've not seen that in years, and I have mixed memories of it, and so I'd be curious to visit that one as well. And some of the Spielberg things, really, sort of see how he's addressed sci-fi. But next week, we are going both back in time, we're going forward in chronology, but back in time, and again, sort of like really to look at something that was an early notion of pulp science fiction. We're going to do John Carter from 2012, I think, and I think one of the reasons we're talking about is why didn't that film make more money? But also, I'd like to think about sort of John Carter in the context of everything else that came since, as in when the novels or the pulp novels first came out.
Yeah,
So-
and I'm really interested to have that discussion. I think that you like that film substantially more than I do. I don't hate it. I think it was panned, and I thought, yeah, this isn't nearly as bad as I was led to believe. But I think that you're more of a fan, and I want to dig into all of that. We need an episode where we just thrash it out and we disagree passionately. We had a couple first season. We're getting along too well, Scott.
I think we do, yeah. Season 3 is definitely going to be. So I've got a couple of right, I'm throwing that one in because that's going to be some real controversy.
Good.
Well, yeah, but yeah. So John Carter, I think, is going to be interesting because again, it's been probably about a year or so since I watched it. But no, I really do enjoy that film for a number of reasons. So we'll get into that on the next episode. But as usual, Julian, this has been an absolute blast. I love these conversations. And so thank you very much. Hope you've enjoyed it as well. Sort of, get into the nub of this sort of mediocre sci-fi film. So yeah.
No, I'm glad to address it. I mean, and I like you said, we'll do more Spielberg. I mean, I think Spielberg is fascinating to me. He's one of those people. Even his mistakes are fascinating. But I hope everyone will go to the Twitter, Pod Time Space, and go to your Patreon.
Yes, but yeah, go to Patreon. Also, don't forget that these episodes you'll be listening to us. We're coming into your ears as a podcast, and we're also going to be coming to your eyes on YouTube. So these full videos, that's full 2 hours of content of Julian and I talking about these, coming at you. So go check those out. They're on 20th Century Geek. They're on the channel 20th Century Geek on YouTube, and they come out every 2 weeks, usually around the same time as the podcast. So anyway, thank you very much, Julian. Appreciate it. And
My pleasure.
We'll catch up on the next one.
There's something very important I forgot to tell you.
What?
Don't cross the streams.